Alright, the time has come to compare these two 6S capable, ready-to-run desert trucks. Over here we have this cool new green body on the Traxxas Unlimited Desert Racer. And over here we have the old favorite, the Arrma Mojave 6S. Let's put them head to head and see which is the right truck for you. Both of these trucks are built for desert action, but their personalities are quite different. So first let's look at the basics. Both of these trucks are around the same size, and I'll measure that in a minute to see which one's technically heavier and bigger. But Traxxas calls this a pro scale, while Arrma specifies this as a 7th scale. But looking at the two, they don't look too different. They are very different though, and I'll show you some of those differences. With the power system, they're fairly similar. The Arrma comes with a 2050 kV Spectrum motor, as well as the 150 amp Spectrum speed controller. This one happens to have a little bit bigger speed control in it, but it has the stock motor and it can still run 6S. This one has a 2200 kV motor, as well as the VXL6S speed control that comes with Traxxas. That one's not specifying the amperage, but I would guess around 150 amp. So these are fairly equal power systems. The Mojave, however, is rated a little bit faster, with Arrma claiming them to go 60 plus miles an hour and Traxxas claiming 50 plus. The Mojave has fully independent suspension front and rear, similar to what you'd see on most Arrma trucks. It has a longer wheelbase than most, but it does have that same suspension setup. This has pros and cons. The pro is that it's really easy to work on. If you're used to working on anything like a Creighton or really any off-road bashing Arrma, you can work on a Mojave. Easy access to things, the suspension is very familiar looking. Over here, however, this is a very unique suspension setup. It does have the independent front suspension. However, in the rear, it's got a super long travel, solid axle, 4-link suspension. The downside being that this is much more complicated of a system and harder to work on. Also harder to access, which you'll see in a bit. Now, because suspension travel is such a highlight on this Traxxas UDR, I figured it'd be kind of cool to measure the travel on each truck and see how they compare. One advantage that Traxxas has is that it has a lot of down travel. Down travel is most useful for when the surface of the road you're driving on dips down. That allows the body of the truck to stay relatively still while the wheel drops down and follows the undulation of the ground below it. If you don't have enough of that, you're going to be coming up off the ground when the surface dips. The Mojave, on the other hand, has very limited down travel, even if the shocks are lowered all the way. There's not a super great way that I know to measure the suspension travel, but let's just base it on where the body sits and how high it goes. So in the front here, the lip of this fender goes to about 4.5. From 4.5, without lifting the tire off the ground, to looks like 8 inches. The Mojave goes to way down to 4, and wow, actually goes over 8 inches. So the Mojave wins on the front suspension travel. Let's look at the rear. The UDR goes all the way down to 3.5 inches. Wow. And all the way up to a little over 8.25. So that's almost 5 inches of travel. The Mojave also goes down to 3.5, but only goes up, see, if the tire wants to lift here, so it only goes up to a little under 7 inches. That means the UDR has over an inch of rear travel more. At the time of filming this, which is June of 2025, the prices on these trucks are as follows. The UDR comes in at $749 right now, and this Arrma Mojave comes in at $679. So it's a cheaper bargain if you go for the Mojave. Prices do fluctuate a lot, especially lately. Make sure you check the website before you take my word for it whenever you watch this video. Because Traxxas has an ecosystem approach, you also are going to need to factor in the cost of Traxxas batteries and Traxxas battery chargers. That does add up and add to the price significantly. You're still going to have to buy that for this, but many people already have batteries that are compatible. Whether it's the IC5 or EC5 connectors that this uses, it would work. If you've got a charger that you use for other trucks and they use those connectors, it would work for this. So it's a lot more cross-compatible when it comes to the power systems and batteries for this Arrma vehicle. Since making my previous UDR review video, I've learned a few things, thanks in part to my subscribers, that help out with this scenario. One is that some other battery manufacturers sell LiPo batteries with Traxxas plugs already on them. Or you could purchase an adapter which converts your existing LiPo connector to the Traxxas plug. Another option is to change out the plugs on the truck itself to one that is of your preference. But be cautious if you do this, because it may void your warranty through Traxxas. Now, while the warranty from Traxxas is only 30 days, there is also a lifetime electronics replacement program that goes beyond 30 days. So if you change out the plugs, you'd be excluding yourself from that program. That program offers discounts if something fails, such as the ESC. So you still want to be cautious about whether or not to do this option. So in terms of visual appeal, these trucks are very similar, but they have some unique differences. But let's ask the expert which truck she thinks looks better. There you go. See you stable on there? All right, you see these things? They look pretty cool, right? So, of these two trucks, all right, this one's new, this one I've had for a while. They're both kind of similar, right? Which one appeals to you as looking the best?
This one.
Really? Wow.
They both look good. I like this one the most because it has shapes on it, kind of like a star.
Well, cool. I think I like that one best because it's like brighter colors and has more of a realistic look. But that's okay if you like this one better. That's awesome. We each like different things, right?
And they both have the inside.
Yeah, you see those little guys in there? Telling them where to go.
I could like put one of my Barbie dolls in there.
Barbie dolls in there? That would actually be pretty cool. Now you may think by looking at them that they look pretty similar. The Traxxas UDR is a little bit lower actually than the Arrma Mojave in terms of their stance. But the UDR is hiding a very special secret, and that is super long travel suspension. Watch what happens when I put both of them up on a stand. The Mojave looks about the same. The UDR, on the other hand, hides some very long travel suspension. Look how far down those back wheels go compared to the Mojave. This thing is packing some huge travel. So that sets it apart in terms of suspension geometry and driving dynamics. Now they both have some unique scale features on them to make for a realistic look. They both have two people inside. They both have fire extinguishers on the back, and there's some other features on it that make it look more realistic. But the UDR is in a league of its own in terms of scale, realistic looks. It's even got working lights in the front and the rear. It's got functional spare tires in the back, and it has all sorts of other little details that make this truck designed and built just like the real thing. When you take off the tires, which say BF Goodrich on them, by the way, there's imitation disc brakes and calipers inside there. When you take off this body, there's a full roll cage in there and accessibility to that neat suspension. There's even an axle and a motor and a jack back here, so they really haven't held back on the detail of scale looks. So when comparing the length, looking at the wheelbase, these trucks are exactly the same, with the Arrma Mojave being just a little over 21.5 inches long and the Mojave exactly that as well. Looking at the width, the Mojave comes in at a little less than 14 inches wide, with the UDR being a little narrower at a little over 13 inches. Looking at the overall length of the truck, a little hard to measure, but it looks to be about 27.5 inches, with the Mojave slightly longer at about 28, but that's not much. Now let's take a look at the weight. So first let's weigh the Mojave. This is without batteries. Now this Mojave does have a little bit extra weight given that I have a larger ESC in it, but we'll still weigh it anyway. So this comes in at 13 pounds, 2.2 ounces. And compared with the UDR, quite a bit more at 14 pounds, 4 ounces. So a little over a pound more for this UDR. And that makes sense given all the scale features, in addition to 2 extra tires that add a lot of weight. Let me show you just how different these trucks are to take apart. When you want to remove the body on the Mojave, you simply do it the old-fashioned way with these body clips. Take it right off and you have access to the truck. As you can see, it looks very similar to most Arrma off-road vehicles, with the center diff accessible there, as well as the front and the rear. You've got your motor and speed control here, and the servo, and you've got the standard independent suspension here with the upper and lower arms and shocks. I will say though, the Mojave is set up in a much plusher, softer suspension setup than most Arrma trucks that I have, and that's what gives it a little extra real scale feel when bashing. Has 12 screws to remove just the body alone, and even that gives you limited access to the truck. Well, now you can really see the scale look in here. So one thing I wanted to share that is an update from the previous video I did, where I said that you need to take off the 12 screws to take off this body in order to turn on and off these lights. That was what I originally thought, because there's nothing visible on here to turn off the lights. But thanks to some subscribers who showed me a little trick, which is in this front left fender here. You can't see it, but if you reach up in here, you can feel around and find the little button to turn these lights on and off. I wish that was a little more well advertised, but that saves a lot of work to turn those lights on and off. Underneath, there's another 12 screws to remove this plate, which gives you access to the motor. The ESC is precariously positioned back here as well. So this truck is not built for ease of access to parts for repairs, and I'm not looking forward to the day that I break it, but it is built for awesome handling and realistic looks that so far none of my other trucks even come close to comparing with. Okay guys, time to try out this beast where it belongs, in the dirt. Nice. Nice. This is so fun. Whoops. So that's why you don't bash this thing. There's really no air control. Sick. Ah. Dude, this thing is so fun. Can't get enough of it. Thing is made for the dirt. All right, time to bring out the Mojave. See how it compares. So still not good air control on this either, but a little better than the UDR. This thing just takes a beating. Yeah, it's definitely fast and rough. Likes to go fast. That's the Mojave style. Not as easy to power slide it. Kind of. So fast. Whoa. Into the rough stuff. So fast. So guys, it's safe to say that both of these trucks are absolute animals when it comes to handling in the dirt. The Mojave is, like I guessed, just raw power, likes to blast through things, slide around and turn. The UDR takes the handling to a whole new level that I've never tried before. It's so fun. The suspension being so soft just soaks up everything, and it likes to slide around. They both like to slide and power slide, but this one does it in a more realistic way, I'd say. For fun factor and realistic factor, this one is hands down a winner. I'm not sure how much of that is going to come up on the video, but I can assure you that that's the case. However, versatility wise, this Mojave is by far the winner. You could take this thing out bashing, or you could take it out driving around on flat like this, or whatever terrain you try to take this on, it's going to be fun. All right, so there you have it. This is a case of raw power and speed over here, along with simplicity and ease of access to parts and repairs. Over here you've got this fresh new look, scale features, long travel suspension, and realistic handling, but hard to work on and a little underpowered compared to the Mojave. And for me, it depends on the type of driving I'll be doing. This one is more versatile, but the realistic driving style is so much fun, and it's one of those things you really can't describe unless you try it yourself. I kind of like having both, but hopefully this video helped you decide which one you are gonna get. I'll be doing some cool driving videos on this in the future. I'll also be looking into some upgrades on this, so stay tuned for that video next. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you in the next video. Thanks.